Welcome to the Slow Living Collective podcast. I'm Amy, wife, mother of two and devoted homemaker. Join me on this journey as we explore the beauty of slow and simple living, where life unfolds at its own unhurried pace. I'll take you through my experiences of slowing down, tending to our allotment plot, finding joy in the little things and making the most of our small home. Together we'll learn to live in harmony with the ever-changing seasons, discovering the magic that lies in embracing the present moment. So let's embark on this enriching adventure towards a more intentional and fulfilling life. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Slow Living Collective podcast. I'm Amy, and if you're new here, thank you so much for joining us. On this podcast, we talk about all things slow, simple and seasonal living and tons of other stuff thrown in along the way as well. Today, I have an exciting episode for you. I am joined by Bethan, and we are going to be talking about holistic well-being and everything that encompasses. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, then definitely keep listening and let's dive into the conversation with Bethan. So hi Bethan, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. Before we dive into the episode, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I am Bethan. I am a meditation facilitator and I run retreats, and I co-run a holistic health and wellbeing kind of collaborative space in North Yorkshire. I have been doing this, I set up quite recently actually, for the kind of collaborative holistic house space. So that was about 4 months ago, so that's all still relatively new. But in terms of meditation teaching, I have been doing that for a couple of years. And I've been running retreats for coming up to 3.5 years, 4 years, something like that. So yeah, it's been a bit of a snowball over the past few years of various different things, all leading up to this kind of big collaborative space, which is really exciting.
That's fantastic. And I know I've said to you before, like, I would love to come on one of the retreats one day as soon as I'm not breastfeeding anymore.
Yeah, we're going to get you there. Yeah, I did say to the retreat location that I was at a couple of weeks ago, I was like, would you consider having a creche? Like, absolutely not.
Yes. No. Let's leave them all at home.
Space of Zen healing.
Can you imagine?
To be fair, I've been thinking, I've had quite a lot of requests from mums that have said, could we have a space that, we could come with our kids, that we could spend the time with them and have that real sort of holistic connection with the kids and get them involved in a kind of a very holistic way. But then also have a creche and some time that we can then do our kind of own work and things like that as well, which I think it's a really cool idea.
Yeah.
I think if we could get something like that going, it'd be really cool. But I've been told point blank no by this retreat venue.
Yeah, we like it to be calm and relaxed.
Yeah. But we will get you there.
But today we're going to talk about sort of a holistic approach, I guess, to our health. And so before we get started in that, do you want to explain what holistic health looks like for you and why you believe it's so important in what is a very fast-paced world that we live in?
Yeah, so I was thinking a little bit about this question. I think, to me, holistic health comes under the idea of just holistic life. I truly don't think that you can separate one from the other. It's the idea, to me, that we live in a kind of bubble of a universal ecosystem, and that everything feeds into everything, and you can't step on a blade of grass without it affecting something else. So therefore you also can't put something into your body without it affecting your body in some way. You can everything's got that kind of butterfly effect, that ripple effect of that cause and effect, really, of if you were to purchase something from the supermarket, for example, that directly impacts somebody else that's created that product, potentially somewhere on the other side of the world. And it's the same sort of thing with, again, what you're putting in your body, what you're putting on your body, how you're interacting with yourself, with other people. To me, that's all health. That's all. It's just kind of a holistic life, really. I don't think you can really separate it. That would be my response to that one.
Yeah, I agree. You know, everything, like you say, everything feeds into itself and has that ripple effect across everything. And I think I definitely noticed that more now. I have, you know, over the last like few years been, you know, trying to slow down and simplify everything. And I think you then realize, I don't think it's that you don't realize when you're living a more fast-paced life. I just think you don't have time to maybe stop and think about it so much. And
Yeah.
so I think like since we've like made a conscious effort to sort of slow down a lot more, we, you know, we notice those ripple effects more. We notice more all of the, you know, effects that
Mm.
everything has, like you say, the things we put onto our bodies, into our bodies. And yeah, I think it's, you know, far reaching across like all parts of our life.
Yeah, I think we've been so disconnected, haven't we, for such a long time. And I mean, I could go down a rabbit hole right now on various different subjects, but I won't. That'll be another podcast for another day, perhaps.
Yeah.
But I think that I think it's that disconnect. As you've just said, the more fast paced that you live your life, the more you get carried away with things and you get caught up, and life kind of happens to you. And before you know it, you've got no idea what you're putting in your body. You've got no idea. You know, we're so used to going into a supermarket and not even looking at the ingredients, not having a clue what it is that we're putting into our bodies. We're just used to that. And we're used to just, if something's packaged in a certain way and it's in some bright, shiny paper, you know, that means that we should consume that, or or put that on our body. And I just think that disconnect, people are realizing now, we've really got to look at that, and we've got to kind of strip it all back and slow it all down, because we're not healthy, you know.
Yeah.
We're kind of more unhealthy now than we have been in a lot of ways, despite progress in pharmaceuticals, despite progress in all sorts of areas. So something clearly is not working. And to me, I just think that is the fact that we've not been looking at it holistically, and we've very much almost been we've been filling our lives with things that consistently make us more and more unhealthy, and then expecting one little pill or, you know, a quick fix to everything. And it just doesn't work like that, because you're never going to get to the root cause in that way. So that issue's constantly going to keep arising.
Yeah, and I think sometimes, like, you know, you said about, you know, we've become so disconnected from some of these things. And it's like, I was actually like writing a blog post the other day about something about seasonal living. And like when I'm writing it, it's like, and I think I actually put this in the post that I was writing, it's like these are not, they're not new ideas, right? We're just so disconnected from them that it astounds us. Like sometimes I have a conversation with my husband and he'll tell me something that he's read somewhere about something, maybe it's like sunlight, right? And he'll tell me something and I'm like, yeah, of course, right? And it's like, but why didn't I already think of that? Because
Yeah.
of course,
Yeah.
and it's not new to us, but almost like we have to be sort of like reminded
Yeah.
of like, oh yeah, of course that would work, because that's how our ancestors have done it for thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah. And everything else in nature responds in that way. You know, everything, plants can't survive without photosynthesizing from the sun. Like, of course we need to do the same thing. Of course we need to feed and fuel ourselves in the same way as nature does.
Yeah, and it's just so funny, isn't it, that you're like, oh, of course.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
is. But it's like because we're so pulled away from it and so disconnected from it, that it's almost like, oh yeah, well, like, where have I been for the last 38 years? Why did I not know that?
yeah. And it's so simple as well, isn't it? It's not
Yeah,
even like, because you can, I think it's down to the fact you can feel it in your body, you know, it's so simple, because you can feel in your body if you haven't drunk enough water. You
yeah,
can feel in your body if you haven't nourished yourself in a certain way. But again, it's that level of disconnect, because we've been on this like almost like a hamster wheel for so many years, and it's been getting faster and faster and faster and faster. we have become so disconnected on such a deep level from ourselves that we actually just don't notice. We don't know ourselves on a kind of healthy level well enough. It's like when you people always say, you know, when you stop eating so much sugar, for example, and then when you then have a bit of sugar, you really notice the effects of the sugar. You know, when you strip something back and then you start to reintroduce things again, you suddenly go, oh my god, like, this is, my body doesn't feel healthy. But you don't know that without stripping it back. You don't know that without slowing it all down and kind of taking it all back to basics, do you?
Yeah, and it's funny because when whenever we're sick, like if we get a cold or something, and having small children, they tend to bring us a lot of germs. You know, all my body craves is like fruit at that time. Like I remember when we had COVID, I was like, but that's what my body wanted. And instead of like being like, well, I could take 2 paracetamol and hope I'll feel better, actually, you know, like pharmaceuticals of course have their place, but I just really wanted like fresh raspberries and fresh strawberries. And it's just like when you can tune into those things, because you know sometimes when you're sick, like you can't be bothered to do anything. Like creating a bowl of fruit is like the least of your problems, right? You just want to lay there and do nothing. And so yeah, it's just like tuning into those little things.
And it's interesting as well, isn't it? Because obviously when you're sick, sometimes, I don't know, sometimes your body can crave things. And I'm super aware that your body can crave nasty stuff as well. Get the circle cycle. But actually, again, if you then start to strip that down even further, you go, right, well, what is it in that particular thing? Like, is my body actually craving this thing, or is it craving this certain element that's within this thing that actually, oh, maybe I can find that in some other way that's like going to be a little bit healthier for me in the long run. And it's really interesting, isn't it? It's just again, it's all that kind of stripping back and slowing down, and you don't I think without doing that, you just get carried away, and again life happens to you, and you're really ill, and you've kind of got layer upon layer of things that are happening to you, and you're in this victim mode of like, oh, I don't know why I'm getting so ill all the time. I don't know why I'm finding myself in the same situation all the time.
And our society as well never treats health from its root cause either. It's like, you know, it treats it from like, well, I'm sorry you're feeling that way, but here's another tablet that will cover that. And it just reminds me of a time when I was I don't know, well, a bit younger, and I went on the birth control pill, and it made me like within a few days made me feel like so down and just terrible. And so I spoke to the doctor and was like, I'm just feeling like dreadful, thinking that they would offer me a solution like, okay, maybe we change to a different one. And the doctor was like, I can give you antidepressants. And I was like, I don't know that that's the problem.
And then you're in a situation where you don't know what it is, that you don't know whether it's a natural thing that you're feeling this way, or whether you're having side effects from this man-made chemical infused product, you know. And then where does it stop? You go, oh, we'll have a pill for that. Oh, well, that you having side effects for that particular thing, pop another pill, that'll sort you out. Oh, you've got side effects from that pill as well. Oh, funny that, let's have another pill. And then before you know it, your system doesn't know what its natural balance is. It's so full of all this stuff that's, as you say, it's sticking a band-aid on a broken arm, isn't it? And hoping that it's going to heal. Like, it's I think it's just bonkers, and we need to just kind of start going back to basics a little bit more.
I think as well, you know, like that situation in particular, it's like I could have been like, okay, I'll take antidepressants now as well. And obviously, you know, there's nothing wrong with taking antidepressants if they're necessary. But it was like, I'm sure I didn't feel like this 3 weeks ago, and I suddenly do. The only thing that's changed is that, you know, I'm on the birth control pill now, and so like just by
like the power of deduction. I think that might be the problem here. And I just came off of it, and lo and behold, I felt fine after that. And you know, it is just this constant like cover, because then what would have happened if I'd have taken antidepressants and then I started to get side effects from the antidepressants? Would I then have to take something else? And like, where does it end? I'll be 6 layers deep and have no idea what's going on. So yeah, it's really interesting how we never go to the root cause of a lot of things, and we're just like, well, yeah, that's a bit odd, let's see if we can fix that.
I suppose it's kind of, I think about this a lot, because I think you're quite similar to me, and I naturally like to make my life harder. Easier. And I think I'm naturally a sort of questioning person, so I think a lot, overthink a lot, probably sometimes. And so sometimes I go, how can you not question where this is coming from, or why your body's feeling a certain way, and how can you not delve into that root cause? I think because I just naturally do that. But I suppose it makes sense, doesn't it? It's that quick fix, but then everything, if you think about the way that our whole existence has gone over the years, like, everything's a quick fix. We want stuff at the drop of a hat. We want things done now. And so it makes sense that actually the same applies to our health, and that people again want that. And again, you know, it's scary, isn't it? If you've got symptoms, or if you're not feeling well, or it's like if you've got a fever or something like that, of course you want that to be over as quickly as possible, don't you? It makes sense that from a safety point of view, people want that quick fix. But actually, like we've just said again, when you then ignore that root cause and you do go for that quick fix, you're making it 10 times more complicated and complex to then actually uncover the root cause and actually heal from that sort of base level that's going to be sustainable.
Yeah. And it's really interesting with a fever as well, like you said, because like our body raises its temperature to fight an infection, and it's an important part of the process to allow your temperature to rise so that it can kill off the infection. But we obviously, like, you know, would reach for something to bring our temperature down. And you know, it's difficult, isn't it? Because, you know, you can get dangerous levels of, you know, like temperature as well. And I'm always, especially with the children, I'm like, you know, where's the cutoff? Like, how much am I willing to you know, wait on their temperature before, you know, it's too high and we're at the risk of like febrile convulsions and stuff. So I am around their temperatures, I'm very I would say I react a bit quicker.
With them. So what would be your process then? Do you think it's education then? You know, it's having that knowledge of like what actually is a dangerous point.
Yeah, I mean, so with my children in particular, my eldest she doesn't really get temperatures. It's rare, and if she does, it's only slightly up. Whereas my son really struggles with the temperature. If he gets sick, he will have a very high temperature. When we had COVID, for example, he was still a baby, and he had a temperature of touching like nearly 40 degrees, and I knew he was in danger territory and we had been giving him medication to try and bring it down anyway. So, you know, I try not to give them too much medication, but know the point of where, you know, I think I need to assist them a little here. And, you know, it was just before he turned 1. And so, you know, I knew his temperature was not coming down at all. And like, it was something like 39.8. And I knew then that he's in danger of a febrile convulsion because his temperature's so high and the medication isn't even bringing it down. And so I spoke to 111 at the time, and they were like, you know, give him the 1-year-old dose, because he was like 3 weeks off of being 1, because, you know, that will actually help his body more. And that brought his temperature down. So you know, a minor like rise in their temperature, I probably wouldn't worry too much about. Just keep an eye on them.
And I guess that's come from your ability to step back, hasn't it? And your ability to kind of not, you know, that if you step back and you kind of, you see it all for what it is, and you can then make a less reactive decision to something, can't you? You can then go, oh, actually, I feel intuitively that, and through knowledge and through, again, stepping back, that this is a dangerous situation and that actually I need to react quickly to this, or that this just feels quite normal and that he just needs to burn that off a little bit. And
yeah, and I guess it's the same for me as well. Like breastfeeding him, there's been a couple of times where I've had mastitis, and like that will give you, I mean, mastitis is grim, it's really awful, but that will give you like a super high temperature, and you know, you can actually go downhill very, very fast with mastitis. So any inkling that I'm going to get mastitis or something is not right there, I will immediately get to the doctors and get antibiotics, because it is the only option to get rid of the infection. And so it's like, it's just being more aware, isn't it? And knowing where that point is, that I'm not risking getting a abscess in my breast because I didn't act quick enough. This needs antibiotics, and so be it. And
then making that informed decision from that.
Are you ready to slow down and embrace simplicity even in the midst of life's imperfections? I've got just the thing for you. Discover my free guide, Imperfect Slow Living, designed to help you find peace and simplicity in your everyday life, no matter what it looks like. Slow down and breathe, unwind and rediscover calm, no matter how hectic life gets. Simplify your life one step at a time with practical tips. You don't have to be perfect to enjoy the beauty of slow living. It's time to make a change. Visit theslowlivingcollective.com/slowliving to download your free guide today. Start your journey towards a more deliberate and intentional life. Slow living isn't about perfection. It's about finding peace in the imperfections of life. Download your guide and embrace a simpler, slower and more meaningful life. That's theslowlivingcollective.com/slowliving.
I was going to ask you, like, what have you found are the benefits, I guess, in embracing sort of more natural approaches to your health and well-being?
God, I mean, I could go on and on. I could wax lyrical about this all day, every day. But I think really it comes to feeling like I've got a little bit more autonomy over my life. And again, like I'm not, like life isn't happening to me. Like I actually do have a little bit more control over. I know that none of us, that's another question, isn't it? How much control we really have. But I do believe that we do have quite a high level of control, and probably more so than we're led to believe sometimes. And for me, delving a bit more into kind of a bit more natural journey gives me that autonomy a little bit more. It strips everything back, and it also, I'm very, very strong on kind of connection to, you know, I'm a meditation teacher. I'm very strong on the connection to everything, and it makes me feel so much more connected to everything. It makes me kind of understand a little bit more where things have come from, how they've been made, how whose hands have made them, you know, how that has actually come from a natural source that is naturally occurring, just like I am. I think that's probably the main thing that comes from me. And then obviously just the health benefits, just that you physically feel completely different. And like we said before, when you start to strip things back, for example, if like I've just come back from a week-long retreat where we just ate like the most amazing like from the land, from the garden, farm to table food that was all organic. It was all in this beautiful circular system, created, grown, picked, all of it with love. and you can taste the difference, and you can feel it in your body.
Yeah.
You really can. Yeah. And when we were saying, with when you start to strip things back, then you can really feel it.
Yeah.
You can physically feel, almost feel your cells regenerating on a proper, like, deep level, can't you?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So my mum, she has like a gluten intolerance, and but aside from that, she also has like other gut issues as well, and has like forever. And she has recently like made the switch to eating organic, and because there was a lot of vegetables that she couldn't have because it just like irritated her gut in like many different ways. And she recently switched to having organic, and she predominantly doesn't have any gut issues now. She's eating organic.
Really?
So
Wow.
she can eat a lot of like the vegetables. So she wouldn't be able to eat things previously like cabbage. Now she can eat it fine if it's organic. And she is like questioning, like, so what is it? Is it the pesticides that's actually causing, like an imbalance in like your gut microbiome, or what is it? And I suppose it's going to be different for everybody as well, but for her, yeah, she's like, suddenly I can eat all of these things that I haven't been able to eat for years.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah.
She's not back on gluten yet, but in terms of in vegetables and stuff, there's been things like cabbage and broccoli she could only have a small amount of, but when she eats organic she could eat like a normal portion. So
yeah, and it's interesting to talk about the gut microbiome, because that's, maybe she just, perhaps she needs to kind of heal that balance, regain a bit of balance, and then maybe once that balance kind of been regained, then she can head back into eating things like gluten again.
Yeah, and so she has as well. She's a migraine sufferer like me, and so when you get migraines, having medication is like almost essential, to function. And so she has had a lot of medication over time, whereas I, having been pregnant quite a lot in the last few years and breastfeeding, there's nothing I can take, so I have to just like power through a migraine, which is not the easiest. But it's made me think, like, when I'm not breastfeeding anymore, I can do it. Like, it's not pleasant, right? But I've had to find other ways to manage those migraines because there's just no option, because I used to take like a mixture of paracetamol and codeine. You can't have codeine while you're breastfeeding or pregnant, and so I've had to just find ways. And it's like silly things like if you use like a menthol on your eyes, and then put like a cold wet flannel over the top of it, I mean, you can't open your eyes. It creates like this immense icy atmosphere, but it actually really helps my migraines. So and it's like, now I'm thinking like, well, I don't want to go back to that, because I can cope and I can manage. It's not easy, but in some ways, I don't want to be taking like such strong medication. And so over, my children are not too far apart, so in like the last 5 years I've either been pregnant or breastfeeding most of the time. And so now it's like, well, I've gotten 5 years. So.
Yeah. And do you find that that's then made you, going back to what we were talking about before, that's when you don't have that quick fix available, that has made you more go, okay, so where's this starting from? Like, why, delve a little bit deeper into, rather than just going, oh, I'm just somebody that suffers with migraines, actually going like, right, well, what's causing these migraines? Like,
and it's
yourself again back in that driver's seat.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So I used to have like a really strong sense of smell, which I don't think helped when it came to my migraines. Since I had COVID, I don't have such a strong sense of smell. It's not gone or anything. I mean, it did briefly, but it's not as strong. And I haven't had as many migraines since. So I might be the only recorded person on the planet that's like telling you that COVID was okay for me. I mean, it wasn't. It was miserable, obviously, and COVID is miserable. But yeah, that is definitely something I would say that has been a benefit to me.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
And
see,
so
that makes my brain automatically go, oh, so what's the link between
maybe I need to be studied.
yeah.
But yeah, so it's things like that, but also, you know, like in the depths of a migraine, when like my skull is splitting apart, you know, I'm rummaging around my bathroom like, what can I put on my head to try and ease it? And that's why I've also got like a little clip. People sometimes see it when I'm like on Instagram, but it's like an acupressure clip. And it clips like in the fleshy part between your forefinger and your thumb. And I've no idea if it really works or not, but my migraines do go. So it's one of those things that is still a work in progress to know whether it's the answer or not. But in the midst of a migraine, I just try anything, honestly. If you said like hanging your head upside down off the balcony, I'd be like, I'll give it a try.
Oh, bless you. Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah. Do you know what? That's really interesting as well, what you've just mentioned about the acupressure points, because I was thinking about that earlier as well, that, you know, when you said, oh, of course these things work, I also sometimes I think the same about Chinese medicine and things like that.
Yeah.
You know, of course, again, going back to the holistic approach to our health and our bodies, of course, if you look at your tongue, you'll be able to tell something about another part of your body. Of course, if you press some part of your body, then that's going to affect somewhere else in some sort of way. Obviously, people have different opinions on how well these things work, and kind of those subtle energy channels and things like that. But in my head, again, like you were saying before, I kind of go, it makes more sense than anything else.
Yeah.
That everything is attached to everything, and that we should be, you know, that actually, yeah, you can tell a lot from looking at one particular little ailment. That doesn't exist just on its own. You know, you don't just have one little thing affecting one little part of your body that's not going to intrinsically affect another part of your body.
Yeah. It's so interesting. It's something I want to study. Because I'm a yoga teacher, I want to look more into Ayurveda. But it's like it's just like in one of a million stack of things that I want to do. But these things, some of them they're so ancient. This is like ancient medicine, and it's like, of course, this is how people healed themselves in the past. Like, and I think, you know, in the modern world, I think we are very much focused on like one way, like a pharmaceutical way. And, you know, I'll never knock pharmaceuticals, because, you know, they have their place in so many instances. But, you know, there are other ways you can try as well and find the root causes of these things. There are so many different ways that you can sort of approach your health, I think.
And if you think about, you know, the countries that have the longest lifespans, and the people that live the longest and are the healthiest, it is always these countries that look at their health from a holistic point of view. It's always these people that have this sort of real deep connection to themselves, and really kind of listen to themselves and practice these rituals and these ancient kind of energy work practices that really, again, get them to actually be able to hear what the body's trying to tell them. These are the people that live the longest. So you kind of just go, again, of course.
Yeah. And it's like, you know, in the Western world, we're like you said, you know, we're the illest we've ever been. I mean, and I just think so, you know, so much of it just comes from like our food chain, really. you know, so many of these things that, you know, if you think like here and the US, you know, we're just a bunch of really poorly people.
Yeah,
And
we've got to start doing something about it, because
yeah,
it's not going to get any better unless we do kind of step back and look at it in a different way, is it? We've got to try something new, even if, again, not everything's right for everyone. But I think, yeah, we've really got no option but to look at it from a slightly different way.
yeah, I agree. And you know, like I think like just going on to another question, I guess, you know, more and more people are starting to become more aware of their surroundings and slowing down. Like, I don't know if it's like a millennial thing. I don't know, like when I was growing up, it was like, you know, work hard, go to university, get a good job, hustle hard, work. And now I think people are like, actually, I just no. And like that's not the life I want for myself. And I think, you know, as people slow down, you know, and not live such a fast-paced life, I think people are becoming more aware of that. So like, how do you think like slowing down can help, I guess, help people reconnect with themselves and their surroundings and everything, I guess?
I honestly think that everything comes from slowing down. I truly think that, I suppose it's like when you go on holiday and you have these grand realizations that you come back and you go, I'm going to quit my job. And
Yes.
it's exactly the same concept, isn't it? I mean, I suppose as a meditation teacher, that to me is I truly think that it's the key to everything. I think you start to slow down, your thoughts get, you know, the gaps between your thoughts get wider, really, and you can kind of really see things for what they are and really start to again delve into the root causes of things, everything. You don't get so caught up in everything. And I truly think that if we all practice that stepping back and slowing down consistently at the start and the end of our days, we would interact with our lives, with each other, with the world, with nature, with all of it, with so much more understanding, and I think natural empathy. Kind of naturally, we've been more, because I don't actually think that quite often, I'm not particularly super book smart on certain things, but I think I am very naturally inquisitive. And I do think that I'm quite naturally empathetic and understanding of things. And I truly do think that that comes from meditation. I think that has, for me, come from that stepping back, creating those gaps between thoughts and between ideas, and, you know, again, calming that monkey mind, slowing everything down. And then with that has come this immense feeling of love and gratitude. That is what, to me, it all comes back to. You slow things down and you see things really for what they are, and the empathy that comes with that understanding when you start to strip everything back, with that comes this such a deep level of love and compassion for everything that exists. And then I think then you can meet the world with that. You know, you can meet the world with that level of compassion and love and acceptance. And then again, everything else just kind of falls into place. You know, you can kind of then go, well, if I, you know, what if I meet myself with love? What if I was to meet myself with love? If you focus on that, then you can see where you're not meeting yourself with that. And that is always the shit that you're putting in your body, and that's always the way that you're talking to yourself and the way that you're interacting with yourself. And the same with you know, the same with what you're eating. I think actually you can read every book under the sun, and there's always a million and one people offering various different ways of doing things and different ways of eating and different things to channel and try and experiment with. But actually, if you do slow down and you do practice love and gratitude and acceptance and all of these different practices, and I think naturally you just know. I truly think you just know. You know what's good for you. You know what's not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, I think it's. I just truly. I could go on about it forever, but yeah, I think it's everything. Everything. And also you slow down and you have time to kind of reflect a little bit more. And I think you're not as reactive, so
Yeah.
you are able to actually respond to your life and to other people and things that come to you in a much more sort of slow, grounded, empathetic way, without responding with just like really quick panic and reactivity.
Yeah. And I think sometimes, like, when you're living like really fast paced, it is panic. It's a panic. Is like the default, like, quick, I've got to deal with this, or it's funny that you mentioned, actually, and I laughed at the time when you said it about going on holiday and like being like, I'm going to quit my job, because like all my, I guess, adult life, I would say, I always get my best ideas when I am on holiday. And
Yeah.
I'm always like, I'm always like then so eager, like I'm going to come back and quit my job. I'm not living like this anymore. And it is always on holiday that you get those sort of grand ideas where you're like, actually, this is what I would prefer to be doing. And I think it's so true that because you're slowing down, and when you're on holiday, you're just, life at home can keep you quite like bound up, and not give you any time to think on it. It's like, I hate my job, but I've got to go because I'm going to be late.
Exactly.
And so when you do slow down, and being on holiday is a great example, you're able to better think like, actually, this is not what I want for myself, but what do I want for myself?
And that's interesting as well, isn't it? Because it's kind of usually when you're on holiday is when you're maybe getting sunshine, you're living this kind of slower paced life generally, aren't you? You're really kicking back, and you're really sort of like living a very, even if you are going out for meals and stuff every night, you're focusing on the basics of what it is that brings you joy, and if you're there with your family, then you're spending that time with your family that usually maybe when you're at home you just don't have that same interaction, do you? That proper deep connection time with yourself and with your family and the people that you love. And again, it's no matter who you speak to, everybody says it, don't they? That you go on holiday, that's the reason that nobody ever wants to come back from holiday, because
it's a good job we don't all go on holiday and come back and be like, that's it, I quit. Crash the economy.
I did a retreat a couple of years ago, and we got back and one person divorced their husband and 2 people left the job.
Fantastic though. Sometimes I think like sometimes you're not on the right path, right? And life will show that to you. And like, I had this situation years ago before I met my husband, and I was in another relationship and it wasn't great. And I was in this relationship, I was in this job where they were like, we want to put you through like your accountancy training. Like, I was a accounts assistant at the time. Want to put you through your accountancy training. And I liked the company I worked for, like I would have stayed. And so when they were talking about like, we could put you through your accountancy qualifications, I was like, okay, fine. Like, my maths is terrible. Like, I don't know who thought that was a good idea. And then I went on holiday. This wasn't the catalyst though. I went on holiday. So I was gone for like 2.5 weeks because we had like this once in a lifetime cruise that we went on with our family. And when I got back, I did leave my relationship when I got back. Straight away as soon as I got back. We were living together at the time as well, but our tenancy, it was quite well timed. Our tenancy was coming to an end. And I came back from this holiday, ended my relationship. My tenancy was coming to an end, so I moved back home with my mum, and then I got made redundant like 2 weeks later. And I remember one of my friends at the time, she was like, your life must have been on completely the wrong track, for everything to just do this complete 180. Like all of a sudden I had no relationship, I had like, you know, the place I lived in was, you know, gone. I had no job, and it was like, what has happened? It was like, and then like 6 months later I met up with my husband, and we've been together ever since. And so like sometimes I really believe sometimes life has to move stuff out the way for you to get to
completely.
I would never have met my husband if, you know, all of these things didn't align. But then also, you know, not that it was just about meeting him, it was that from there I decided, because I went into a part-time job, that's when I decided I'm actually going to do, I think now's the time that I want to do my master's degree. And so it had this like massive knock-on effect on everything.
Yeah, and maybe perhaps if you hadn't have had that slow down time and that space, these other things, as you've just said, you need that space to then be able to bring other things in, don't you?
Yeah, so although sometimes life can feel like it's turning on its head, sometimes I think like, and it sounds cliche, I think sometimes to say it, but it is just like making that space for other things to come in.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah. Full firm believer in that. Yeah. Even if you can't see it, it's like that whole concept that sometimes you can't see the wood for the trees, isn't it? Like, it is literally just that you've got to just, again, you've got to create that space to be able to just see clearly, figure it out, have a different perspective, and take yourself, almost be a witness for a little bit, as opposed to being just so stuck in the middle of your own life, you know?
Yeah, sometimes you just got to trust that things are gonna work out.
Got you back.
Yeah, sometimes, and it's not always easy, is it? Sometimes, you know, life will like put you through the ringer, and it feels really difficult. Things just ebb and flow, and sometimes, you know, sometimes you're in like a good place, and like I'm an anxious person, so when things are going well, I'm like, what's coming? I can't even relax when it's good.
Yeah, but then I guess if you think about it, then like the key once again is it's in that stillness, isn't it? And then I think within that stillness you find that acceptance of that ebb and flow. Like it's yeah,
and I think slowing down definitely, I think it connects you to that whole ebb and flow of life. Like for me as well, slowing down is you know, we've slowed down our lives, we've tried to simplify our life, our home and everything, and we're more connected than ever in living more seasonally, which like goes back to what we're saying about like our ancestors, like of course.
yeah, and then again you feel you kind of you strip it all back, and potentially you live more seasonally. I think that once you start to strip it all back, you kind of can't help but the other things kind of follow, don't they? And because you feel so you slow it down, and then you find this this deeper connection to your life and everything that's going on around you. And then actually I think within that you feel really held, don't you? It's almost like, I don't know about you, but if I think about living cyclically, I kind of go, right, well, I'm living, it makes sense because I'm a part of nature. And then my brain goes, oh, well, if I'm a part of nature, then I'm not so isolated, even in my human existence. I'm held by this bigger picture. I'm held by the ebb and flow of nature. And I think you don't feel quite as isolated then within that ebb and flow, do you? You go, right, well, this is just nature. I am just nature. So it's meant to be almost. It's that sort of it's that balance of kind of holding on and then releasing, isn't it? That balance of kind of striving and then letting go.
And I always feel like, like when you really think about it, like we've said all the way through, these things actually, when you think about them, are like quite obvious, and then we're like, I don't know why I didn't think of that. Like, of course we're more internal and live sort of slower and just more inside, I guess, in the winter. Like, of course, it's hibernation season. Nature is hibernating. Of course.
We're not covered in fur.
Yeah. I mean, of course. Yeah, of course we slow down in the winter. And of course we feel more alive and more, you know, able to take things on in the summer. Like, we have longer daylight hours. We get more natural vitamin D. Like, of course. And it's just, you know, it just makes sense. And but I don't, because we're so disconnected from it, I think sometimes we have to be reminded of these like very basic things that we've been disconnected from, that it's still a surprise to us. We're like, oh, of course that makes sense. But we have to be reminded of it because we've been so disconnected from it for so long.
It's funny, isn't it? Because so I run a shop within this holistic cooperative space, and it's really, really interesting actually to see kind of the cycles of what people buy, because so it's a holistic shop, so everything that I sell is quite the idea really is to kind of connect a little bit deeper to ourselves, to other people, really everything that we've been talking about, and to give alternative viewpoints from a more natural perspective and choice and things like that. So a lot of the stuff that I sell is, like, for example, I sell a lot of books that are all kind of intentionally sourced, again, to make you think a little bit, and to kind of make you discuss and have these kind of conversations with more people, and then to make your own mind up, obviously, from that. But it's really, really interesting because you see through, you know, I see that people even unintentionally live really cyclically, because I can see what types of stuff they're buying, and they're going, oh, this is really strange that I'm really drawn to picking up this particular type of book. And they don't realize it, but naturally they're drawn to living in a certain way at a certain time of year, because we are animals, and because we are nature, and because, you know, again, people are really drawn at the moment to the lunar cycles. And I think again, this is a whole other topic of conversation that we could probably go on about for hours, but people now are sort of really feeling the shifts within themselves with relationship to where the moon is and what's going on up there. And again, for me, I just kind of go, of course.
Yeah. It's basically our whole conversation, isn't it? Of course. Yeah, and you know, it makes so much sense with the lunar cycles. I mean, like, you know, like, very simply, you know, the moon pulls the tide, we're mostly water. You know, it makes sense. And yeah, it's fascinating, but it also a really good reminder of how disconnected we are from everything. You know, like, our ancestors very much lived by the sun, and you know, we, for a long while, have been told, you know, the sun, like, stay away from that. But you know, we need the vitamin D from the sun is, like, super important to us. And you know, the key to everything. I remember last year I had to have some blood tests done, again, breastfeeding related, like wonky things because of breastfeeding. And yeah, she was like, oh, I'll check your vitamin D levels. Now, I spend, like, all of my time from spring till autumn pretty much outside. And I was like, if they're not good, then I need a refund, because, you know, but my vitamin D levels were fine. But it's just, you know, like you say, we are nature, we are animals, we act like, you know, the rest of them, and that we are at more energy in the summer and we are at less energy in the winter. And it does.
And I guess as soon as you start to embrace that a little bit more, you take the pressure off yourself as well, don't you?
Yeah.
To live up against the grain. And because we have, again, because the way that we've been living for such a long time, we are very used to just pushing through, and again, that with that pushing through comes that disconnect, doesn't it? And you know, that idea that you've got to be on all the time, you've got to, again, with the with various different cycles of the seasons, but also as women with things like our menstrual cycles and things like that. You know, it's naturally, we are not meant to be so on all the time. I mean, I think it's multifaceted, but I have a very, very strong belief that that is where a lot of mental health issues come from and things like that as well, is this disconnect from our natural rhythms, and that we just ignore them. We ignore the cues, we ignore these natural voices, these natural things that are shouting at us to stop and slow down and to embrace that.
Yeah.
And while we're not listening to that, we're going, why do I feel like this? Why am I not as productive as I was last week? Why am I not?
Yeah. And it's like, you know, like with menstrual cycles in particular, it's like, you know, like on the first day of your period, like, you know, there's a reason what, you know, your body's working super hard and, you know, you're losing blood. It's only natural that you don't feel great. And leaning into that, if you can like identify that, the parts of your cycle, you know, I think we have what, like 4 parts to our cycle, I think. And so, you know, it's, you know, when you lean into that actually the week of my period, I'm probably not going to feel tip top. And you know, maybe we have a bit more of a relaxing week that week, but I think people are tuning into that a little more. And I notice, I would say, like looking at my menstrual cycle has been sort of like the last thing that really that I would say the more recent thing actually that I've started being like, okay, yeah. I mean, I haven't had my menstrual cycle back for that long, so I give myself a pass there. But it's now it is back and like back in sort of like a routine. I am thinking more like, okay, so, you know, when I've got my period, I am going to feel less productive than say I am around like ovulation, where, you know, I'm probably like cleaning the whole house from top to bottom and moving all the furniture around. But I'm probably not doing that in the week that I've got my period.
Yeah. And again, that takes that pressure off, doesn't it? Whereas, I don't know about you, but perhaps before you would have gone, like, what, you know, why do I feel so emotional? Why am I so tearful at this time? When you are that disconnected, you just, and then that becomes a cycle, doesn't it? Because then you get stuck in your head of, why am I not being super productive, and why do I feel this way?
It's like the beginning of my last period, I went to the fridge to get a chocolate bar because I really just wanted a chocolate bar. And so I went to the fridge to get a chocolate bar, and I said to my husband, there was 4 in this packet and we were going to share them, and you have eaten 3 of them. And he was like, well, I just was hungry. And I was like, but we were having the conversation today, like maybe if that wasn't on the first day of my period, that wouldn't have been a problem.
Exactly.
Are you looking for a delicious way to live a more sustainable and mindful life? Look no further, because I've got something special just for you. Introducing Riverford Organic, your gateway to fresh organic fruit and vegetable boxes delivered right to your doorstep. When you choose Riverford, you're not just eating organic, you're supporting an ethical business that believes in food that's good for the planet and your well-being. Eating organic means you're savouring food grown with care, free from harmful chemicals and absolutely bursting with flavour. By choosing Riverford, you're supporting a business that is committed to sustainability, is employee-owned and passionate about reducing food waste. Embrace the seasons with a rotating variety of fruits and vegetables, fresh, local and in harmony with nature. Riverford has been a game changer for our family, and I think it could be for yours too. There is nothing more exciting for me than grabbing my Riverford box off my doorstep on delivery day. But there's more. As a treat for you guys, you can enjoy a £15 credit towards your second order. Simply sign up at theslowlivingcollective.com/Riverford to claim your credit and start your journey towards healthier, ethical and more seasonal eating.
So society often will talk to us about, you know, the importance of self-care. So what role do you think self-care plays in like our holistic health and how do you think that people can, I guess, cultivate a self-care routine that sort of supports their well-being?
I think it's completely, if you have the ability to practice self-care in some sort of way, which most people do in some way, I think that it comes down to this idea of, for me, it's about energy transference, that you can't pour from an empty cup, that you can't give if you're not full. And so, in my opinion, it's the number one priority to fill your cup up first in whatever way that you possibly can, even if that's just 2 minutes here and there of some sort of self-care thing, to just give you back. It is that energy, it's that pulling back in so that you can kind of give back out again. I think that in terms of creating your own self-care practices, rituals, things like that, I would just always say to start small. Small sustainable changes that you can bring in to your everyday is gonna be more impactful in the long run than kind of, a January kickstart of I'm going to change my whole life in one go. That does work for some people. I personally would say that it doesn't work for most people. And it is those sort of big changes usually come on a bit of an adrenaline high, a dopamine hit. And of course that's not sustainable. So then what happens is that when that dopamine hit then drops again, or when something gets in the way, then you can't keep that up. You've made these big promises that you just can't maintain, and then actually what can happen then becomes the opposite, and you find that you perhaps start beating yourself up a little bit because you weren't able to keep up with these big promises that you've made to yourself, and then potentially you're in an even worse situation than what you started with. So I would always say to, again, just start small, just little changes, in the morning, telling yourself that you're going to wake up with a glass of water, have a glass of water before you have your coffee, have some food before you have your coffee. For me, again, self-care it's meditation more than anything else. It's starting my day with meditation, and from there I always find, again, like I said before, that everything comes from there. If I kind of step it all back, slow it all down, then everything else feels a lot easier. But yeah, I think it's hard. I think if you are somebody that's busy all the time, I mean, even working in this space, I'm sure you're the same, you still have to remind yourself sometimes to self-care. And if you've got busy working lives, or if you're a parent, or we all have it, we all have times when self-care feels a little bit easier. And again, I think just simplifying it. There's so much noise out there, isn't there, about kind of various different things that you can do and try, but just making little steps to just drink that little bit more water each day. Maybe rather than, I don't know, overhauling the whole of your diet in one go, looking at perhaps just one particular snack that you eat a lot of that's full of sugar, and going, what can I swap that out for that's a little bit healthier? Yeah, I think just small sustainable changes. If you're in the car on the way somewhere and you're rushing about, maybe putting on a meditation while you're driving, listening to a podcast that's like this, that kind of gets you a little bit in that headspace. It doesn't have to be big, in your face things all the time. It's just slow and steady wins the race. Little simple changes in any way that works for you, and not comparing how that looks to anybody else.
I love that. Podcasts in the car is something that I love. I haven't been doing it for long, but if I'm going for, like, my mum lives like literally just up the road, if I'm going further than my mum's and I'm going to get a decent amount of time in, I will put podcast on. And I just find, like, absorbing that rather than just like music on the radio is just like fills me up so much more, than like I was actually saying this to my husband earlier, like rather than hearing like Elton John for the 53rd time this week, or something like that. It's nothing against Elton John, and he's fine. You know, instead, it's just giving me like something else to think about, and so I really do enjoy podcasts in the car, and just taking like little moments here and there. I try and do like a little bit of gratitude journaling in the morning, and I like to just lay for at least a few minutes when everybody has left the bedroom, just for a few minutes, and just nobody's talking to me, no one's breastfeeding, none of that, and just a few minutes. But and my husband works from home, and so we are lucky in that there's not that rush in the morning here, which is nice. And I know that's not the same for everybody, but just having those few moments where like no one's touching me because they will for the rest of the day. Just taking tiny little spaces of things is, and so often I think like I see a lot on Instagram, I guess, about like how particularly mothers, it will say like having a shower isn't self-care, and like washing your hair isn't self-care, and like trying to say that these are basic functions and they shouldn't be self-care, but actually like taking a shower can be self-care. Like, yes, I've got to wash myself, of course, but actually while I'm in there, like I've probably got a podcast on again, but
absolutely,
it's I get the idea. It's like trying to let everybody like settle for like brushing your teeth as self-care, right? But sometimes those little mindful moments, they are self-care.
And they're acts of love. I think if you can see these things as acts of love, if you can see, cleaning your house as an act of love for yourself, that you're creating a space that's sacred to you and that you feel relaxed in, I guess it's just that mindset shift, isn't it? It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be kind of, it's these things that are accessible to everyone, no matter like how much money you're making or how much time you've got in the day. It's kind of, I suppose, again, just maybe reframing the perspective of some of these things, to be self-care and to be these acts of love, and to kind of to maybe just do them in slightly different ways. And as you say, I'm exactly the same as you. The gratitude journaling in the morning, or kind of intention setting in the morning, oh my goodness, because then that lives in here, doesn't it? And you carry that on for the rest of the day, or at least I'm exactly the same. I'm a big fan of journaling.
I found it really, I guess I started in 2020. I actually got a gratitude journal for Christmas 2019, and I only particularly remember this because obviously like we went into lockdown in 2020 and my dad was unwell, he needed to have heart surgery, and so I recently found my gratitude journal that I'd kept from that year, and a lot of it was just like being thankful for being safe and for being well. And like I think in some ways, like the pandemic, like it did strip all of that stuff back, didn't it? Like like suddenly the outside world was something to fear for a short while, and just being home and being safe felt like everything. And as life has obviously gone back to normal, as as it should, but I think a lot of people still are like, well, there are elements of that normal life that I don't necessarily want to go back to. And I definitely have found gratitude journaling, and I wouldn't say that I'm always consistent. That definitely ebbs and flows as well, but when I can, try and get it done, because I know how good it makes me feel. And also I remember that period of time in particular, like when, not just because of the pandemic, but having my dad unwell and needing heart surgery at the same time, like it felt like that period of time would have been stressful anyway, but with a pandemic on top of it,
oh god,
it felt like a lot. And it was having like that daily gratitude really did help.
You realize that there's still little pockets of good things going on, don't you? Even in the worst times. Me and my husband, one thing that we do that we've been doing for a very long time is we do 3 good things every evening. So every night before we go to bed. He hates it. We've warmed to it over the years, and sometimes he actually says it in the first instance. But generally, we'll get into bed, and it's become a little bit of a routine. It's almost become a bit of a superstition to me now. Like, I can't not do it.
Yeah.
And we will do 3 good things. And we've always said, even if, even on the worst days, 3 good things, even if they're the same 3 things, even if they're all the same as each other, what were 3 good things? And even if they're just like, I breathed, I woke up today, even if it's just that 3 times, then that's putting that feeling of that there is positivity and that there is love kind of into your body. And quite often as well, it's even on the worst days, I mean, not always, but sometimes not there, but usually most evenings it's each other. One of them is each other as well. I think that's a really nice practice to get back into as well.
And like, regardless of whether we live like fast or slow lives, we all have like busy aspects to our lives, and it's nice to have like a point of connection at the end of the day, when everything is done, just have like a point of connection where you can be like, hi, how was your day?
Definitely.
So for someone who is new to the idea of holistic health and holistic well-being, what would you recommend people do to start nurturing themselves in a more holistic way?
I would recommend starting with journaling. I would probably recommend starting with writing down all of these different elements of your life. So looking at, say, your relationships, and that's relationship with other people, relationship with yourself, looking at your environment, the people that you're surrounded by, what you're eating, what you're putting out into the world, what you're putting on your skin, kind of almost putting things into columns a little bit, and just really taking some time to sit with each one, and to really feel into your body whether you feel that the way that you're living in that certain aspect is healthy for you, and is serving you in a positive way. And again, I would always say that you know if something, if a relationship's serving you or not. If you're putting things into your body that potentially aren't fueling you in the way that you feel that it should be. I just very firmly believe that. And I think if you had to start with just writing everything down, putting everything into these separate columns, and then kind of working from there step by step, again, little sustainable changes within each column if you can, or even just looking at the one that's most important for you at that time and that feels the most accessible for you, and just starting there. Again, I think sometimes just getting things on paper, out of your head, writing them down, bullet pointing, and then you've got it there in black and white. It's kind of a really good place to start, is having things written down, and then you can kind of tick things off as you go and go back to them.
Yeah, I love that. Well, it's been so wonderful having you on the podcast and sharing with us all of your amazing insight into holistic well-being and health. So where can everyone connect with you online?
So you can find me on Instagram and Facebook. My business is Roots of Tolos, so that's TOLOS. And my website is www.rootsoftolos.co.uk.
Excellent. And I will link everything as well.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. Oh, it's been lovely.
Thank you so much for joining me.
You're off all day.
It was fantastic. Thank you so much.
And another amazing conversation. It was so fantastic to have Bethan with me on the podcast today. I know I say this quite a lot, but I am always so grateful that I get to speak to so many incredible humans on this podcast. It's like the best thing ever. I just don't know how else to explain it. And I know this little podcast is all of my own creation, but I'm just so grateful that I have the ability to chat with people all over the place. Hi Beatrice. Beatrice, my cat, is here. You might have just heard her meow. So she's decided that she's joining in the podcast today as well. But yeah, I am just so grateful that I get to speak to so many incredible humans from all over the world, actually, all over the world. Amazing. It's just incredible. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast and all of our discussions about holistic well-being. You can find Bethan on everywhere that she already said, and I am going to link all of her links to Instagram and her website in the show notes and the description below, so you can check that out and check her out. And you can find me as always over on Instagram, which is at the Slow Living Collective. You can check out the website, which is theslowlivingcollective.com. You can probably find me other places. I will leave it all in the description, and I will speak to you all in the next episode. So until then, have a great week.